This time. Next time we might not be so lucky. Jiwoo understood. This was the message from Earth Defense Command arrived 3 days after the Battle of Pelixar. Admiral Taemin's face appeared on the holographic display in Commander Hyunwoo's ready room, and his expression was grave. Commander, we have a situation. Krath intelligence reports indicate they're mobilizing their grand fleet. Over 2,000 warships. They're planning to crush you with overwhelming numbers. Hyunwoo felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Estimated arrival time? 10 days, maybe 12. They're gathering forces from across their empire. Commander, you can't fight that many ships. You need to withdraw. If we withdraw, the Velix are finished, and then the Krath are on our doorstep. I know. That's why I'm sending reinforcements. But they won't arrive for 3 weeks. You need to delay the Krath somehow. Avoid a direct engagement until help arrives. After Taemin signed off, Hyunwoo called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. Captain Jiwoo, Commander Sangwoo, and several others gathered in the conference room. Also present was Dr. Nari, the fleet's chief science officer, a brilliant woman who usually stayed in her laboratory. 2,000 ships, Sangwoo said quietly. That's a 40-to-1 advantage. We can't win that fight. We can't run either, Jiwoo added. If we leave, the Krath will destroy the Velix worlds and then move on to human space. We have to stop them here, but how? Another officer asked. Even with all our advantages, we can't fight 40-to-1 odds. They'll overwhelm us through sheer numbers. Dr. Nari cleared her throat. Everyone turned to look at her. She rarely spoke in tactical meetings, preferring to leave military matters to the military officers. What if we don't fight them in space? She said quietly. Explain, Hyunwoo ordered. Nari activated a star chart on the table. The Helios Nebula. It's a massive stellar nursery, filled with electromagnetic interference, gravitational anomalies, and unstable protostars. Navigation through it is nearly impossible. Nearly impossible for anyone, Sangwoo said. Including us. Not necessarily. Humans have been training in difficult environments our entire existence. Earth's asteroid belt, Jupiter's magnetic storms, solar flares. We've developed navigation techniques that work in extreme conditions. The Krath haven't. To them, the nebula would be complete chaos. Captain Jiwoo leaned forward. You want to lure them into the nebula and fight them there? Yes. Their sensors won't work properly. Their communications will be jammed. Their formations will break apart. We can use hit-and-run tactics, appear and disappear, make them fight our kind of battle instead of theirs. It's incredibly dangerous, Hyunwoo said. We could lose ships to the nebula itself. We could, Nari agreed. But if we fight them in open space, we'll definitely lose. This way, we have a chance. The room fell silent as everyone considered the plan. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it might be their only option. I need to think about this, Hyunwoo said finally. Dismissed. Dr. Nari, please stay. After the others left, Hyunwoo looked at the science officer. Tell me honestly, what are our chances? In the nebula? Maybe 30% survival rate. In open space against 2,000 ships? 0%. Those aren't good odds. No, sir, but they're the only odds we have. While the human fleet prepared for the coming battle, Specialist Bora made a discovery that changed everything. She had been analyzing captured data from destroyed Krath ships, looking for intelligence about their military capabilities. Instead, she found something else. She burst into Commander Hyunwoo's ready room without knocking, her face pale. Sir, you need to see this now. Hyunwoo looked at the data she presented and felt his blood run cold. Is this accurate? Yes, sir. I've verified it 3 times. The Krath aren't expanding because they want to. They're expanding because they have to. Their homeworlds are dying. The data showed a biological catastrophe. A plague had swept through the Krath Dominion 15 years ago, killing billions and rendering entire planets uninhabitable. The plague was still active, still spreading. The Krath needed new worlds to colonize, and they needed them fast. They're desperate, Hyunwoo said quietly. This isn't about conquest. It's about survival, yes, sir. And there's more. I found records of their attempts to cure the plague. They've tried everything they know. Nothing works. According to this data, their species will be extinct within 50 years if they don't find a solution. Hyunwoo stared at the data for a long time. Finally, he called for Lieutenant Hee-jin. I need you to contact Dr. Nari. Ask her if human medical technology could develop a cure for this plague. Hee-jin looked at the data, her eyes widening. Sir, are you suggesting we help them? After they attack the Velix? I'm suggesting we give them an alternative to war. If we can cure their plague, maybe they'll stop attacking. Maybe we can end this without more bloodshed. And if we can't cure it, then we fight them in the nebula and hope we survive. Dr. Nari studied the plague data for 2 days straight, barely sleeping. When she finally emerged from her laboratory, she looked exhausted but excited. I can do it, she told Hyunwoo. The plague is complex, but Earth medical science is far ahead of Krath technology. We've dealt with worse diseases. I can synthesize a cure, but I need time. 6 months, maybe longer. We don't have 6 months. We have less than a week before the Krath Grand Fleet arrives. Then I'll have to work on it after the battle. If we survive. The human fleet began moving toward the Helios Nebula. It was a 3-day journey, and they used every minute to prepare. Engineers reinforced ship systems against electromagnetic interference. Navigators studied the nebula's interior, planning routes through the chaos. Weapons officers prepared for close-range combat. Captain Jiwoo spent hours with her pilots, going over every detail of the plan. Young-soo and Misun would lead the fighter squadrons, using the nebula's gravitational eddies to maneuver in ways the Krath couldn't match. Remember, Jiwoo told them, in the nebula you're flying blind half the time. Trust your instruments, but trust your instincts more. And if things go wrong, don't try to be a hero. Eject and let us pick you up. Yes, ma'am, they chorused. Commander Sang-woo prepared his fast attack group for guerrilla warfare. His ships would be the hunters in the nebula, appearing from ion clouds to strike and then vanishing again. It was dangerous work, but Sang-woo was confident. We trained for this, he told his crews. Earth prepared us for hostile environments. This nebula isn't worse than a solar storm near Jupiter. We can handle it. On the 7th day, the Krath Grand Fleet arrived at Pelixar. High Chancellor Krathon himself commanded the fleet from his massive flagship, Eternal Glory. He expected to find the human fleet defending the planet. Instead, he found it gone. Where are they? Krathon demanded. We're detecting a transmission, Chancellor. It's from the human commander. Hyunwoo's voice came through, calm and cold. High Chancellor Krathon. This is Commander Hyunwoo. We are withdrawing from Pelixar. If you want to fight us, follow us into the Helios Nebula. Otherwise, we'll consider this matter settled. Krathon's mandibles clicked in rage. They're running. They know they cannot win. All ships pursue them into the nebula. We will crush them there. Chancellor, the nebula is dangerous. Our ships are not designed for those conditions. I don't care. They humiliated us at Pelixar. They will pay for that humiliation with their lives. All ships follow the human fleet. The Krath Grand Fleet entered the nebula like a vast swarm of insects. 2,000 ships pushed into the churning gas and radiation, hunting for their enemy. And the trap closed behind them. Inside the nebula, the Krath fleet began to fall apart immediately. Sensors went haywire. Communications broke down. Ships lost formation, unable to see more than a few kilometers in any direction. The electromagnetic storm scrambled their navigation systems. And in the chaos, the humans were waiting. Commander Hyunwoo watched his tactical display, seeing the Krath fleet scatter throughout the nebula. He smiled grimly. All ships commence Operation Ghost Storm. Show them what happens when you hunt humans in our kind of environment. The battle for survival had begun. In the depths of the Helios Nebula, the Deathworlders would face their greatest test, and the Krath would learn that sometimes the prey is more dangerous than the predator. The Krath Fourth Assault Wave emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 300 warships, each bristling with weapons and armored in thick plating that made them look like flying fortresses. At the center of the formation, the command ship Glory of the Swarm carried Warlord Krathix, a battle-hardened veteran of 20 campaigns. On the bridge of his flagship, Krathix studied the sensor displays with satisfaction. The planet Pelixar was defenseless. The Velix had only a handful of ships in orbit, civilian transports trying desperately to evacuate the population. This would be an easy victory. Warlord, we are detecting additional ships, his sensor officer reported. Unknown configuration. 57 vessels in defensive formation around the planet. Krathix's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Velix found allies? How pathetic. Open a communication channel to these fools. The channel opened, but there was no image, only audio. A male voice spoke in perfect Krath language which surprised Krathix. This is Commander Hyunwoo of the Terran Union 3rd Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw immediately from Velix space. This is your only warning. Krathix laughed, a harsh chittering sound. Terran Union? I have never heard of you. You have 57 ships. I have 300. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. The response came after a pause in a tone so cold it actually made Krathix's carapace prickle. Negative. Then the channel went dead. Krathix snarled. All ships attack formation. Crush these insects. The Krath fleet surged forward in their traditional swarm pattern, hundreds of ships spreading out to envelope the enemy from all sides. It was a tactic that had won them countless battles, overwhelming force from every direction, giving the enemy nowhere to run. They were halfway to the planet when the first explosions began. Krath ships started dying, not from visible weapons fire, but from invisible mines that their sensors hadn't detected. The mines used stealth technology far beyond anything the Krath had encountered. They simply floated in space until a ship came close, then detonated with devastating force. Evasive action, Krathix screamed. Find those mines! But it was too late. The Krath had charged directly into a minefield that stretched across their entire approach vector. Explosions rippled through their formations. 20 ships destroyed in the first 30 seconds. 30 ships, 40. Warlord were detecting small craft, the sensor officer reported. Thousands of them. Drone swarms descended on the Krath fleet. These weren't large drones, they were tiny things, each barely bigger than a missile. But they moved with terrifying coordination, attacking in groups. They targeted engines, weapons, sensors. Individually, they were annoying. Together, they were deadly. Fighter squadrons, eliminate those drones, Krathix ordered. The Krath launched their fighters, and that's when the human fighters appeared. On the TUS Sentinel, Captain Jiwoo watched her tactical display with satisfaction. All squadrons, engage at will. Yes, ma'am, came the chorus of responses. Young-soo pushed his fighter to maximum acceleration, his wingmate Mi-sun matching his speed perfectly. They dove into the Krath formation like hawks among pigeons. The Krath fighters were heavily armored but slow. Human fighters were light, fast and piloted by people who had trained in Earth's high gravity their entire lives. Target locked, Young-soo said calmly, his fingers dancing over his controls. He fired a burst from his plasma cannons and a Krath fighter exploded. That's one. Two, Mi-sun reported, taking out another fighter with a missile. The battle raged across space. Human fighters used tactics the Krath had never seen. They didn't run from danger, they charged into it. When their weapons ran out, some pilots actually rammed their fighters into Krath ships, ejecting at the last second in their emergency pods. The Krath pilots were brave, but they were fighting an enemy that seemed to have no fear. Every human pilot fought like death itself was chasing them because, in a way, it had been. Earth's harsh environment had bred fear out of humanity over millions of years. What remained was cold determination. Krathix watched his fleet take devastating losses and could not understand what was happening. These humans fought with a savagery that shocked him. They used weapons he had never encountered. Their tactics made no sense. They should be running, but instead they were attacking. All ships break through to the planet. Ignore the fighters, focus on reaching orbit. The Krath fleet tried to push forward, accepting losses to achieve their objective. Some ships made it through the minefield and the drone swarms, but then they encountered the human warships themselves. Commander Hyunwoo had divided his fleet into 3 groups. His own group held the center. A second group under Commander Sangwoo had circled wide, using stealth to avoid detection. Now Sangwoo's ships appeared behind the Krath fleet. All ships fire at will, Sangwoo ordered calmly. The human warships opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space, far more advanced than anything the Krath possessed. These missiles didn't just explode, they hunted. They dodged point defense fire, they coordinated with each other. They found weak points in armor. Krath ships died by the dozens. The ones that survived the missile barrage faced something worse, human railguns. Kinetic weapons that accelerated metal slugs to incredible speeds. When those slugs hit Krath ships, they punched completely through the armor and out the other side. This is impossible, Krathix roared. They're too few. We should be winning. But they weren't winning. The Krath had numbers, but the humans had experience. Earth's brutal history had taught humanity how to fight wars that no other species could imagine. They knew every dirty trick, every clever tactic, every way to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, like a single organism. When the Krath tried to swarm one ship, the others covered it. When the Krath concentrated fire, the humans simply weren't there anymore. Their stealth technology let them fade in and out of sensor range, appearing where the Krath least expected them. "Warlord, we've lost over half our ships," his tactical officer reported. "We must retreat." Krathix's pride warred with his survival instinct. He had never retreated from a battle, but he had never faced an enemy like this either. These humans weren't just warriors. They were something else. Something terrifying. "All ships fall back to hyperspace coordinates. Emergency retreat." The Krath fleet broke formation and ran. It was a chaotic retreat, every ship for itself. The humans pursued ruthlessly. More Krath ships died as they tried to escape. Commander Sang-woo's fast attack group was particularly devastating. His ships were smaller and faster than the main battleships. They chased fleeing Krath vessels and picked them off one by one. Sang-woo had grown up on Earth's moon, training in space combat since he was a teenager. To him, this wasn't a battle. It was practice. When it was over, only 47 Krath ships escaped into hyperspace. The rest were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost no ships. 3 fighters had been destroyed, but all 3 pilots had been recovered safely from their ejection pods. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Hyun-woo watched the last Krath ship disappear into hyperspace. His expression remained neutral, but his crew could see the satisfaction in his eyes. "Damage report," he ordered. "Minor damage to 6 ships, sir. No critical systems affected. Casualties are minimal, mostly minor injuries. And the planet? Pelixar is secure, sir. The civilian population is safe." Hyun-woo nodded. "Good. Communications, send a message to the Krath Dominion. Make sure every ship in their fleet receives it." "Yes, sir." "What's the message?" Hyun-woo thought for a moment, then spoke clearly. "Tell them you wanted war. We brought it to you. Every ship you send against the Velix will be destroyed. Every world you attack will be defended. This is your final warning. Withdraw from Velix space or face complete annihilation. Signed, the Terran Union 3rd Fleet." The message was sent on all frequencies, encrypted so only the Krath could decode it. Within hours, it reached every Krath military installation in their empire. On Pelixar, the Velix population watched in awe as human ships patrolled their skies. The Deathworlders had done what seemed impossible. They had faced overwhelming odds and won decisively. Ambassador Tilvin sent a message to Commander Hyun-woo, his voice shaking with emotion. "Commander, the Velix Confederation owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved millions of lives today." "We did our job, Ambassador," Hyun-woo replied. "But the war isn't over. The Krath will come back with more ships. Next time will be harder. What will you do?" "We'll be ready. Tell your people to stay calm. As long as the 3rd Fleet is here, no Krath ship will touch your worlds." As the Velix celebrated their salvation, the human crews were already preparing for the next battle. They ran diagnostics on their ships, restocked ammunition, debriefed pilots. There was no celebration, no triumph. Just quiet professional determination. Captain Ji-woo found Young-soo in the pilot ready room. He was reviewing his combat footage, analyzing his own performance. "You did well out there," she said. "I made 3 mistakes, ma'am. Missed 2 shots I should have made. Got too close to that cruiser. You destroyed 7 enemy fighters and survived. I'd say that's a success." Young-soo looked up at her, his face serious. "Success is when everyone comes home alive, ma'am. We lost 3 pilots today. We recovered them all." Lieutenant Hye-jin stood in the airlock, adjusting her uniform one last time. Behind her stood 2 Marines in full combat armor. She had argued against bringing armed guards, but Commander Hyun-woo had insisted. "Remember," she told the Marines, "we're here to help them. Try to look friendly." One of the Marines, a tall man named Dong-min, grinned. "Friendly. Got it, Lieutenant?" The airlock opened and they stepped into the Velix station. The artificial gravity felt wrong immediately, too light. Hee-jin's training kicked in, and she adjusted her stride to avoid bouncing with each step. Ambassador Tilvin waited in the docking bay with 6 other Velix officials. They were all staring at the humans with wide yellow eyes. Tilvin stepped forward, his hand raised in what Hee-jin assumed was a greeting. "Welcome to Border Station 7, Tilvin said. His voice was high-pitched, musical. "We are grateful beyond words for your response to our distress call." "We're here to help," Hee-jin replied, returning the gesture. "Commander Hyun-woo requests a tactical briefing. We need all available intelligence on the Krath forces." Of course. Please follow me to the command center." As they walked through the station corridors, Hye-jin noticed how the Velix moved. They glided more than walked. Their bodies adapted to the low gravity. She also noticed how they kept glancing at her and the Marines, their faces showing something between fear and fascination. The command center was a circular room with holographic displays floating in the air. Several Velix officers worked at stations around the room. They all stopped and stared when the humans entered. "Please forgive our reaction," Tilvin said nervously. "We have never met humans in person before. Your appearance is striking." Heejin understood. Humans looked like predators because they were predators. Forward-facing eyes, exposed teeth when they smiled. Movements that were too quick and precise. To species that evolved as prey animals, humans probably looked terrifying. "Let's focus on the Krath," she said gently. "Show us what you know." For the next hour, the Velix presented their intelligence. The Krath Dominion was a militaristic empire, aggressive and expanding. Their technology was crude but effective, emphasizing armor and numbers over sophistication. They had destroyed 3 Velix colonies and were preparing to attack a 4th. "What about their tactics?" Heejin asked. A Velix tactical officer, a female named Rena, activated a display. They use swarm formations. Hundreds of ships attacking simultaneously from multiple angles. They overwhelm our defensive positions through sheer numbers. We cannot target them all fast enough. And their weapons? Plasma cannons, short to medium range. Very powerful but inaccurate. They compensate for poor accuracy with volume of fire. Heejin studied the tactical data, her mind already forming strategies. "Have you tried dispersing your forces? Making them spread out their swarm?" "We tried that at the Battle of Kelvin Station," Rena said quietly. "They simply split their forces and overwhelmed each of our groups separately. We lost 47 ships that day." "Because you were defending," Heejin said. "What if you attacked?" The Velix looked at each other in confusion. Ambassador Tilvin spoke carefully. "Lieutenant, that would be suicide. The Krath have overwhelming numerical superiority. Attacking them directly would result in complete annihilation. For your ships, maybe. Not for ours." The Velix didn't understand, and Heejin didn't explain further. Instead, she activated her communicator. "Lieutenant Heejin to Commander Hyunwoo. I'm ready for you to come aboard." An hour later, Commander Hyunwoo arrived with Captain Jiwoo and 3 other senior officers. The Velix command center felt suddenly crowded. The humans filled the space with their presence, their heavier builds and precise movements making them seem even larger than they were. Hyunwoo looked at the tactical displays without expression. Then he turned to Ambassador Tilvin. "Where is the next Krath attack expected?" he asked. "The colony world of Pelixar, Commander. We estimate they will arrive in 4 days. We are evacuating the population, but we cannot save everyone in time. Millions will die." "No, they won't," Hyunwoo said flatly. "We'll be there waiting for them." "Commander, with respect, the Krath are bringing their 4th assault wave. Intelligence suggests at least 300 warships. You have 57. Captain Jiwoo smiled, and several Velix officials took an involuntary step backward. "Ambassador, you need to understand something about humans. We don't fight fair. We fight to win." Over the next 2 days, the Velix watched in amazement as the human fleet prepared for battle. They did things the Velix had never imagined. They deployed thousands of small drones that disappeared into space. They scattered mines along the most likely approach vectors. They sent stealth scouts that the Velix sensors couldn't detect to observe Krath fleet movements. Specialist Bora and her intelligence team came aboard the station to integrate with Velix sensor systems. The Velix technicians were shocked by the human technology. Bora's equipment was compact, efficient, and incredibly powerful. "How do you make your ship so hard to detect?" Rena asked Bora one evening. "Heat management, signal dampening, hull design," Bora replied, her fingers dancing over her console. "Earth is a crowded planet. We've been building stealth technology for centuries because we were always fighting each other. We learned to hide from ourselves before we even left our planet." "And your weapons?" Bora looked up, her expression serious. "Let's just say humans are very good at breaking things. We've had a lot of practice." Meanwhile, Commander Hyunwoo held strategy sessions with his officers. They studied the Krath tactics, identified weaknesses, and planned their attack. The Velix officers who observed these sessions were disturbed by the cold efficiency of human military planning. "They talk about death like we talk about cargo. Shipments," one Velix officer whispered to another. "They come from a death world," his companion replied. "Death is probably normal to them." On the 3rd day, the Velix noticed something else strange about the humans. They exercised constantly. In the station's gym, Human crew members ran, lifted weights, and practiced hand-to-hand combat during their off hours. The artificial gravity on the station was 0.7 standard, but the humans wore weighted vests to compensate. Why do they do this? Tilvin asked Hyojin, watching Marines spar in the gym. Earth's gravity is 1.4 times galactic standard, Hyojin explained. If we don't maintain our strength, we get weak. Besides, staying fit keeps us sharp. In combat, a split second can mean life or death. Your entire species lives like warriors. Not warriors, Ambassador. Survivors. Earth isn't a kind planet. Everything there is trying to kill you. From the weather to the wildlife to the diseases. Humans evolved to survive the unsurvivable. That's why we're good at war. We've been at war with our own planet since we existed. Tilvin looked at the humans training with new understanding and new fear. These beings weren't just soldiers. They were the product of millions of years of brutal natural selection on a planet that would have killed any other species. On the fourth day, the Third Fleet departed for Pelixar. The Veliks watched them go with mixed feelings. Hope, because these powerful allies might actually win. Fear, because they were beginning to understand what kind of violence these Deathworlders were capable of. Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as his ship entered hyperspace. His crew worked with quiet efficiency around him. They were ready. The plan was set. Now came the part they were trained for. All ships report ready, sir, his tactical officer said. Good. Communications, send a message to the Krath Dominion on all channels. Sir, tell them that the Veliks Confederation is now under human protection. Tell them that any attack on Velix worlds will be considered an act of war against Earth. Tell them they have one chance to withdraw peacefully. And if they don't respond, sir? Hyunwoo's expression didn't change. Then we show them why you don't mess with species from death worlds. The fleet traveled in silence, dropping out of hyperspace at Pelixar 12 hours before the Krath were expected to arrive. They immediately began final preparations. Mines were activated. Drones took position. Fighter pilots climbed into their cockpits and ran pre-flight checks. Captain Jiwoo stood on the flight deck of the TUS Sentinel, watching her pilots prepare. Youngsu, her best pilot, gave her a thumbs up as he climbed into his fighter. His wingmate Mi-sun was already in her cockpit running system diagnostics. The Krath were coming. And the humans were waiting. The alert came through at 0400 hours, waking Commander Hyunwoo from a deep sleep. He rolled out of bed in his quarters aboard the TUS Indomitable and pressed the communication panel on the wall. Bridge. Report, he said, his voice still rough from sleep. Sir, we're picking up a distress signal. It's not human, replied the night officer. Hyunwoo pulled on his uniform and headed to the bridge. The corridor lights were dim, set to night mode, and his boots echoed on the metal floor. When the door slid open, the bridge crew snapped to attention. At ease. Show me what we have, he said, moving to the command chair. The main screen flickered to life. A strange face appeared with large yellow eyes and blue skin that seemed to shimmer. The alien looked terrified. This is Ambassador Tilvin of the Veliks Confederation, the recording said. We are broadcasting this message to all nearby systems. Our worlds are under attack. The Krath Dominion has destroyed 3 of our colonies. Millions are dead. We are requesting immediate assistance from any species capable of military aid. We are willing to negotiate any terms. Please, if anyone can hear this, we are begging for help. The message repeated. Hyunwoo watched it 3 times, his face unreadable. How far away are they? He asked. 6 days at maximum speed, sir, his navigation officer replied. Get me Admiral Taemin. Wake him if you have to. 20 minutes later, Hyunwoo stood in his ready room facing the holographic image of Admiral Taemin. The Admiral looked tired but alert. I've seen the message, Taemin said. What's your assessment? The Veliks are desperate. According to our records, they've ignored every diplomatic request we've sent them for the past 5 years. They called us primitives. Now they want our help. And the Krath? Unknown species. No contact on record. But if they've destroyed 3 Veliks colonies in a few weeks, they're dangerous and aggressive. Taemin rubbed his chin. There's more to consider, Commander. Intelligence suggests the Krath are expanding in our direction. If they finish with the Veliks, human space is next in their path. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. So we help them to help ourselves. Exactly. I'm mobilizing the Third Fleet. Captain Jiwoo is already preparing her carrier group. You'll have 57 ships under your command. Full authorization to engage hostile forces. Rules of engagement, sir? Protect Velix civilians and infrastructure. Eliminate the Krath military threat. Try to minimize casualties, but Commander, Taemin's eyes hardened. Bring our people home alive. That's your first priority. Understood, sir. The next 48 hours were chaos. Ships arrived from 3 different defense stations, forming up in Earth's orbital space. The Third Fleet was not the largest human fleet, but it was one of the most experienced. Many of these ships had fought in the Belt Wars, when mining corporations tried to claim the asteroid belt for themselves. Captain Ji-woo came aboard the Indomitable to coordinate with Hyun-woo. She was shorter than him, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her carrier, the To Sentinel, held 200 fighter craft and the best pilots in the fleet. "Have you seen their ships?" she asked, pulling up holographic images on his ready room table. "Velix designs? Yes, lightweight, fast, minimal armor. They rely on shields and speed. Their weapons are energy-based, moderate power. No missiles, no kinetic weapons." Hyun-woo studied the designs. "They fight at range. And they lose," Ji-woo added. "The Krath use swarm tactics. Look at this." She showed him footage recovered from a Velix emergency buoy. Hundreds of insect-like ships filled the screen, each one covered in thick armor plating. They crashed into Velix formations like a wave, overwhelming the defenders with sheer numbers. "Brutal," Hyun-woo said quietly. "The Velix have never seen this kind of warfare. They've been at peace for 300 years. Their military is basically a police force, and we've been fighting each other for thousands of years." Ji-woo met his eyes. "Which is why we'll win." The Third Fleet departed on schedule. 57 warships entered hyperspace in perfect formation. Inside the Indomitable, Hyun-woo walked through the corridors, checking on his crew. He found Lieutenant Hyejin in the communications center. "Lieutenant, have we received any response from the Velix?" "Yes, sir. They're grateful we're coming. They want to know our estimated arrival time and fleet composition. Send them our ETA. As for fleet composition, tell them we're bringing adequate forces." Hyejin smiled slightly. "They might want more details, sir. They'll see us when we arrive. That will be detail enough." In the cargo bay, Specialist Bora supervised the loading of equipment. She was the fleet's intelligence specialist, and her team had spent the last 2 days gathering every piece of information about the Velix and Krath they could find. "Commander," she said, saluting as Hyun-woo approached. "We've been analyzing Velix broadcasts. They're terrified of the Krath, but they're also terrified of us." "Of us? Why?" "They've been researching Earth. They found information about our history, our wars, our planet. Sir, they're calling Earth a Class 12 death world. In their classification system, that's the highest danger rating. They're saying only insane species live on Class 12 planets." Hyun-woo laughed. "Earth isn't that bad. Sir, they come from a planet with 0.7 standard gravity, no extreme weather, and no large predators. To them, Earth is a nightmare. They don't understand how we survive there, let alone thrive. Maybe that's good. Let them be scared. Scared allies are honest allies." The fleet traveled for 6 days. During that time, they received constant updates from the Velix. The Krath were advancing. 2 more colonies had fallen. The Velix border station was preparing for evacuation. On the 6th day, the Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the Velix border. Alarms immediately rang on the Velix station. "Unknown vessels detected." "Wait, those are human ships." "How many?"
Counting now.
57 combat vessels. Inside the station, Ambassador Tilvin stared at his display screen. The human fleet spread out before him, each ship larger than any Velix military vessel. The flagship, the Tus Indomitable, was twice the size of the station itself. "Dear spirits," Tilvin whispered, "what have we called here?" Commander Hyun-woo sat in his command chair, watching the Velix station on his screen. His tactical officer was reporting ship status. His communications officer was hailing the station. Everything was proceeding according to plan. "Sir, the Velix are requesting permission to send a diplomatic shuttle," Hyejin reported. "Granted. Have Lieutenant Hyejin prepare to meet them." "Sir, that's me," Hyun-woo smiled. "I know. You're our best diplomat. Make them understand we're here to help. And Lieutenant, don't tell them everything about our capabilities. Let them wonder." As Hyejin left the bridge, Captain Ji-woo's face appeared on the communication screen. "Impressive entrance, Commander," she said. "That was the point. These Krath need to know they're not fighting the Velix anymore. They're fighting us. And when do we engage? Soon. First we learn everything the Velix know. Then we show the Krath what happens when you threaten a death world species. Outside the Indomitable, the Third Fleet held formation, a wall of steel and firepower between the Velix colonies and the approaching Krath forces. The distress call had been answered. The Deathworlders had arrived. The Helios Nebula was beautiful and deadly. Clouds of glowing gas stretched for millions of kilometers, painted in shades of purple, blue, and crimson by the light of forming stars. But inside those clouds, electromagnetic storms raged. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared. Radiation levels spiked without warning. It was a navigator's nightmare. For the Krath Grand Fleet, it became hell. High Chancellor Krathen stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his tactical display break apart into static and fragments. Around him, his crew worked frantically to maintain communications with the rest of the fleet. "I can't reach Battle Group 7, one officer reported. Battle Group 12 is reporting navigation failure. We're detecting weapons fire, but we can't identify the source." Krathen slammed his fist on his command console. "Find the human ships! They must be here somewhere." But finding them was impossible. The human fleet had split into small groups, each one moving independently through the nebula. They used old-fashioned visual navigation, watching for landmarks in the gas clouds. They used hardened systems that could function despite the interference, and they used tactics that the Krath couldn't counter. Commander Sang-Woo led the first strike. His fast attack group had positioned themselves near a massive ion cloud waiting. When a group of Krath ships stumbled past, confused and separated from their fleet, Sang-Woo struck. All ships, fire missiles, full spread. The missiles launched from stealth and the Krath ships never saw them coming. Explosions lit up the nebula. Before the Krath could respond, Sang-Woo's ships vanished back into the ion cloud, their heat signatures masked by the cloud's natural radiation. "Target destroyed," Sang-Woo reported calmly, moving to next position. It happened again and again throughout the nebula. Small groups of Krath ships would encounter human vessels appearing from nowhere, taking devastating fire, then disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. The humans fought like ghosts, striking from the shadows and melting away. Captain Jiwoo commanded the battle from her carrier, the 2S Sentinel. Her fighter squadrons were perfect for this environment. The small craft could navigate through spaces too tight for larger ships. They could use the nebula's gravity wells for impossible maneuvers. Young-soo and Mi-sun led a squadron through a narrow passage between two gas giants. They emerged behind a Krath capital ship that was trying to regroup with its fleet. "Target locked," Young-soo said. "All fighters attack run." "Focus on the engines." The human fighters dove on the Krath ship like hunting birds. Their plasma cannons burned through the heavy armor, targeting the weak points. The capital ship tried to turn its weapons on them, but the fighters were too fast, too agile. Within minutes, the ship's engines were destroyed, leaving it drifting helplessly in the nebula. "Confirmed kill," Mi-sun reported. "That's the third capital ship today. Don't celebrate yet," Young-soo warned. "We've got company." Krath fighters appeared from the gas clouds, finally catching up to the human squadron. A fierce dogfight erupted in the heart of the nebula. The Krath pilots were brave and determined, but they were fighting in conditions they couldn't handle. The electromagnetic interference scrambled their targeting systems. The gravity wells threw off their flight paths. The human pilots had trained for exactly this. They used the nebula's dangers as weapons. Young-soo led a group of Krath fighters toward a gravitational anomaly, then pulled up at the last second. The Krath ships, unable to react fast enough in the interference, were caught by the gravity well and torn apart. But the battle was taking its toll on the humans too. 3 of Jiwoo's fighters had been destroyed. 2 more were damaged and limping back to the Sentinel. And the Krath were learning, adapting their tactics. On the TUS Indomitable, Commander Hyun-woo monitored the overall battle. The tactical display was a mess of partial data and guesswork, but he could see the pattern. The Krath were suffering terrible losses, but they were still pressing forward. Their sheer numbers meant that even scattered and confused, they were dangerous. "Sir, we're detecting a large concentration of Krath ships heading toward us," his tactical officer reported. "At least 50 vessels, possibly more." "They've figured out where we are," Hyun-woo said. "All ships prepare for direct engagement. This is going to get ugly." The battle that followed was brutal and close range. The Krath ships emerged from the gas clouds in waves, firing wildly in all directions. The Indomitable and its escort ships met them head-on, trading volleys of weapons fire at ranges where both sides could barely see each other. Human railguns punched through Krath armor. Krath plasma cannons burned through human shields. Ships on both sides died in brilliant explosions that briefly lit up the nebula. Forward shields down to 30%, an officer reported. Missile tubes 1 through 4 are offline. Hull breach on deck 7, sealing now. Hyunwoo remained calm, issuing orders rapidly. Target that cruiser on the port side. All railguns fire. Helm, bring us around to heading 180. Engineering, I need those shields back up. The Indomitable shuddered as a Krath plasma salvo hit its hull. Damage reports flooded in, but the ship kept fighting. Around it, smaller human vessels darted between the Krath ships, targeting engines and weapons. Then Dr. Nari's voice came over the intercom, tight with urgency. Commander, I need you to hold position for 3 more minutes. Doctor, we're in the middle of a battle. I know, sir. But I've found something. There's an unstable protostar near our location. If I can trigger its collapse, the shockwave will clear out all these Krath ships. Will it clear us out too? Not if you jump to hyperspace exactly when I tell you to. Trust me, sir. Hyunwoo made a decision. All ships fall back to Rally Point Delta. Hold that position for 3 minutes, no matter what. Sir, we'll take heavy damage. I know, do it anyway. The next 3 minutes were the longest of Hyunwoo's life. The human ships formed a defensive sphere, taking hit after hit from the Krath fleet. The Indomitable's shields collapsed completely. Hull plating melted under plasma fire. Crew members died at their stations, but they held their position. Dr. Nari worked frantically in her laboratory, calculating trajectories and energy levels. She had planted explosive charges on the protostar 2 days ago, preparing for exactly this situation. Now she just needed to detonate them at the right moment. 30 seconds, she called out. The Krath pressed their attack, sensing victory. They poured fire into the human ships, trying to break through their defensive formation. 15 seconds. All ships prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. The Krath capital ships moved into position for a final devastating salvo. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Jump now. Dr. Nari triggered the charges. The protostar's core destabilized, releasing an enormous burst of energy. At the same instant, the human ships vanished into hyperspace. The shockwave expanded outward at nearly the speed of light, a wall of superheated plasma and radiation. The Krath ships, still firing at where the human vessels had been, had no time to react. The wave hit them like the fist of an angry god. 50 Krath ships disappeared in a flash of light so bright it illuminated the entire nebula. High Chancellor Krathon, watching from kilometers away, could only stare in horror. What was that? He whispered. They destroyed a star, Chancellor, his science officer said, his voice shaking. These humans, they destroyed a star to kill our ships. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the nebula, battered but intact. Damage control teams rushed to repair critical systems. Medical teams treated the wounded. But they were alive, and they had survived against impossible odds. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Hyunwoo looked at his exhausted crew. Status report. We lost 5 ships, sir. Another 8 are severely damaged but operational. Casualties are significant but manageable. And the Krath? Their fleet is scattered throughout the nebula. We estimate they've lost at least 1,000 ships. The rest are disorganized and trying to retreat. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. They had done it. Against 2,000 ships, they had survived and inflicted devastating losses. But the victory felt hollow. So many had died on both sides. Open a channel to High Chancellor Krathon, he said. It's time to end this. The channel opened. Krathon's face appeared on the screen. And for the first time, Hyunwoo saw something other than arrogance in the Krath leader's eyes. He saw fear. Commander Hyunwoo, Krathon said quietly. You have proven your people's strength. The Krath Dominion acknowledges defeat. That's not why I'm calling, Chancellor. We need to talk. Not about war. About survival. Krathon's mandibles twitched in confusion. I don't understand. We know about your plague, Chancellor. We know your people are dying. We know that's why you're expanding into other species' territory. The Krath leader's face showed shock. How did you? It doesn't matter how we know. What matters is that we can help. Dr. Nari, would you please join us? Nari appeared on the screen next to Hyunwoo. She looked exhausted but determined. High Chancellor, I've been studying the data we recovered from your ships. I believe human medical technology can cure your plague. We've dealt with similar diseases on Earth. Give me 6 months and I'll synthesize a cure. Krathon stared at them, unable to speak. Finally, he found his voice. Why? Why would you help us after we attacked you? Hyunwoo leaned forward. Because we've been W.